Alrighty, welcome to Sevedge Sessions episode number...
I think 9.
Does that include Peter from yesterday?
Yes.
So episode number 9, yesterday or last interview, we got to speak with our CTO, Peter Garbers. Really interesting episode covering neural networks, machine learning, AI, and the overall experience as a coder is pretty wild, to be honest. Obviously, still got Bruce with me today.
Cheers, my brother.
Mazel tov.
I will not spill this.
And in addition, we'll have the camera switch whenever we have it. We got Ethan Taylor with us today. So Ethan is our chief sales officer. This is so awkward for him right now. I think this is his first podcast I have to do. You want to look at that camera?
That one? Okay.
So just for that. Most of the time, it'll just be us speaking. So, Ethan, how long have you been working in sales? To give like a quick intro of you.
About 12 or 13 years.
12 or 13 years. It's funny because I met Ethan when I was 18. We worked at a fitness club together called Bodyworks. It is now called like True Fit or something along those lines. Yeah. And it was really interesting. Like, we have been in close contact since I was 18, now 27 now. So it's been nearly 10 years. And we've been kind of in the trenches, like actually working together for a year and a half now. Mm-hmm. And it's been wild. So the reason why I brought him on today is one of the things that we talk about all the time, obviously, is trauma lenses, things along those lines. But what I wanted to add to today is when it comes to communication. Mm-hmm. So I found that more and more students are struggling with the ability to sell themselves, right? We have a lot of students in the program who need help with that from like a really practical basis. And I want today's episode to be a really solid framework for how to have success when selling yourself, right? So Bruce, what made me hire him, he did a bunch of freelance work as a photographer and art, everything along those lines. What brought me to Devslopes and allowed me to get this opportunity was freelancing and marketing, learning how to sell myself. And your entire career path started in personal training. Where did it go from there?
Personal training to the medical device world.
And what was that like working with surgeons? Like, you're dealing with brain surgeons on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the old saying that it's, it's not brain surgery, and it literally was. So it was intimidating because I went from helping somebody lose, 10 to 15 pounds to being in an OR, and you feel completely inept. Like, every person in the room is, way smarter than you, and you feel incompetent for a long time.
What is it like knowing that you're dealing with somebody? So I think the insecurities a lot of the students face is like this massive imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm interviewing for something that I'm brand new for. I can't imagine going in to actually having to work in an ER with somebody who studied for 15 plus years specializing and is now doing something hyper specialized, and you walk in there with maybe couple months of training underneath your belt and you're supposed to tell him how to use your equipment. It's a little pretentious.
It is, and that's one place where it's really not safe to be overconfident, right? Mm-hmm. And it was really, they put you through training and all that kind of stuff. The training was amazing, but you don't go to training for the first few months, right? You really learn alongside somebody. But if the person you're working with or apprenticing with, if you have 2 different cases in 2 different locations, you'll have to split up. Mm-hmm. And mine happened after really 48 hours. It was my second day on. And my boss then, his name's Eric, literally told me, he's like, you'll be good. They know how to use it. Just be there for them and, write the bill up or whatever. And I said, Gomez, there's a saying about this, but it is brain surgery. How do you mean I'll be okay? And but I was okay, right? And I think the intimidation we feel is just overestimating our contribution to the situation, right? Mm-hmm. When I was looking at the surgeon that I was working with, I saw her and I was like, yeah, I have to know everything she does. And that's not true, right? What I really had to understand was my role in that OR, right? How do we accomplish the goal of getting these persons all fixed up, and what is my role in that? Way smaller than assuming I have to know what she knows. I'm not going to. She went to med school at 19. She did 17 years post high school. I can't catch up, right? Especially right now, right? I have 48 hours to figure this out. So I think that's kind of step one for me, was understanding what I contributed.
So I'm going to pause right there. It's really interesting because you said something really interesting. You can't be overconfident, but at the same time, you have to have extreme confidence dealing with surgeons. If you don't, they're probably going to pick you apart. Yeah. What do you mean you don't know what you're doing? Like, if you have any glimpse of that, they're going to probably fucking rip you up. How do you deal with a scenario where you have to show like a cool poise in a sense, but obviously you feel like you're melting under the skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like what goes through your mind? Because these students, right, whether it's their first freelance gig or they're applying for a job, I'm sure they feel the same thing. Like their head is on fire, they're so nervous, heart is going through the roof, and then you're sitting here telling you can't be overconfident, but at the same time you have to be able to portray you know what you're doing. Second day on the job, having to do that.
Yeah, I have a slight disagreement, but let's say that. So there's jargon. So every industry has its jargon. So she looked at me and she said, "Go get me a 5x5," and I was like, "You got it." Right, so I was pretty confident. I left the room. I didn't know what a 5x5 was, right? But what she was really asking for, she was asking for a dura repair device. It's a piece of bovine tendon that gets repurposed to match your dura in your brain. But to her, all she had to say was the jargon 5x5, because the rep that's usually there knows what that means, right? So my confidence there was, okay, I'll go figure out what that is. Right, so I immediately left the room, called my rep, said, "What's a 5x5?" He said, "Easy, orange package is a 5-inch by 5-inch piece of dura. Go in there, grab it, hand it to the nurse, they'll get it opened." Right, so for me, that's not overconfidence. That's just enough because I know where to find the answer. Right. Ironically, when I left the room, they lost confidence in me because the 5x5 is in that room.
Oh no!
So I thought it was somewhere else in the OR, right? And it wasn't. So when I came back in, they were like, "Oh, did you find it?" And I was like, "Yep, and it's in here. Just needed to phone a friend real quick." And they were understanding. They knew it was my second day, right?
So they know it's your second day. They're understanding. Were you in a lucky scenario though? It seems like a surgeon could have easily popped off. What happens in scenarios where
she did? Yeah,
it's right there. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. So the biggest luck I had was, again, I am not the star in the OR, right? I am in some way I'm the lackey, right? There's not much selling to be happening right now. There's the selling's already been done. We've bred confidence that we can do this job. While I'm in that room, she did not even make eye contact with me. She just said, "Hey, I need a 5x5," and then was back at work. My luck was that she didn't turn around and say, "Hey, Ethan, we're all waiting for you. We need to accomplish this goal, and it's all you." That's not what happened. She was literally working, I think it was an aneurysm or something, and she said, "Hey, I need a 5x5," and then that's when the scrub tech said, "That's you," right? So when I left the room, it wasn't really noted, right? Yeah. But when I came back in, a couple people noticed, but not her.
Got it. So
yes, I got lucky.
That was a wildly competitive interview process.
Yeah.
How many people did you have to compete against?
It was 300 or 400. Yeah.
Jesus.
And how long did it take?
About 4 months. About 15 to 18
4
interviews.
months.
Yeah.
15 to 18 interviews?
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through the process of why the fuck did they choose Ethan Taylor, right? Versus
that's assuming I know.
Shayla Smith, right? Why would they pick you?
Yeah. So ironically, so you mentioned earlier that me and you met at Bodyworks, right? Great gym. I'd wanted to get in medical device for a long time. One of my mentors was a higher up at a big eye company, and he'd mentored me for really coming on 2 years. And I was looking for jobs. We'd just landed in Lubbock, and I like to mingle, so I like to go sell myself on the floor at gyms. And I met this guy named Paul, and I really tried to hard close him to help me get in the industry. And he's like, "Man, I don't have anything for you, but I know somebody who does." And he made the introduction. So I got thrown into the mix with 300 or 400 people without really ever applying because I found I found a third door, right? So they put me in the mix with these people, and it wasn't until the third or fourth interview that they didn't even realize I never applied because I had a recommendation from Paul, right? Mm-hmm. So Paul got me in the door, and then once you start that kind of process, now it's competitive. Does that make sense?
So that's what I wanted to stick on for just a moment.
Sure.
You got a backdoor entry essentially into the interview process, but how did you guarantee that they pulled your interview? I'm sure a lot of people applied and it didn't seem like a difference, but it seems like, were you pushed immediately to the first interview probably because you had the recommendation, or?
No. So they have 2 or 3 buffers where the first interview I interviewed with the district manager, ironically also named
How did you get seen by that though? So was it because of the recommendation?
Yep, that's
cool.
Right. Yeah, so Paul gave me a recommendation, said that I was persistent and aggressive because it wasn't just one meeting him. He came to the gym every day, and I was on him. He was a heavyset. He was a kind of a heavyset guy. Really, I think he played pro hockey actually. So literally every time I saw he was stuck on a bench or on the floor, I would go bug him. And I asked him if there was any availability. So it wasn't one meeting. This probably took probably a half a dozen meetings for he was like, okay, this guy's not going to give up, right? So when he recommended me, it came with that recommendation. He also knew that I had a master's degree, and that like the anatomy side of things, they didn't have to teach me, and that I was obviously pretty persistent. So when he met me, that district manager, his first question was, Paul told me you've been harassing him on the gym floor. And I was like, yeah, I have been. I looked his pedigree up, and I wanted to work with somebody like him. And he said he used to work with you, and that was my introduction. So I got another luck struck was the guy that I was interviewing with was the same way. He was extremely persistent. So to him, that was a box he wanted checked.
So I think that's where this entire conversation starts then, right? Because Ethan, yeah, got it. You're interested. I'll talk to you later, right? Middle of a workout, just leave me alone.
Yeah, literally sweating out of breath.
Ethan, like I told you last time, leave me alone. I'm in the middle of a workout. What were those like 15 times like? Was it like that to that extent, or?
Yeah, and kind of luck struck again because he's at a gym. I'm a personal trainer. He's wanting me to go away. He's trying to work out alone. He's listening to music, and my go-to was, "How can I help you? Can I spot you? You look exhausted, right? How can I help you up? Anything." And it was any excuse I could just to be around him a little bit longer.
Did you knew he worked in medical sales before approaching
he
him?
showed up in scrubs. I thought he was a doctor.
Okay.
And when he came in, he had a bag. And that bag said K2M. K2M is a very large spine company that actually, ironically, Stryker bought. But yeah, so it was a giveaway with the scrubs, and it was a giveaway with the bag because of my mentor, Jason. Kind of taught me what to look for.
So going a little bit more detail, though, that 15 no's. Well, I'm imagining myself, like from when I worked in door-to-door sales, getting one no was hard. Getting two no's was, it was painful. Like outbound sales is so hard, especially when you're reaching out to people to try to get help, right? So I feel like most people now are going to reach out to people on LinkedIn. Hey, saw you worked at XYZ. Want to see if you had a minute. Unsubscribe. Do not speak with me, or they just won't answer.
Yeah.
Like when people respond with such blatant harshness, which I'm anticipating he did, especially the last thing you want to do is be bugged at the gym. Like, get the fuck away from me, dude. I don't want to chat with you. How do you deal with that?
It wasn't always that aggressive, but I had a support system. My wife now, and also Jason. Jason gave me proper context that is the game, right? And I had been turned down so many times before that for pharmaceutical jobs, for surgical jobs, and it just seemed like that was I had to get through 100. So I luckily had proper context before getting all those no's.
So proper context was they're going to be mean.
Yeah.
They're going to say no. They're going to say, get the fuck away from me.
Yeah, and they're not going to take you seriously, and they shouldn't, right? They're not going to give you enough time to talk to them. You're going to have to you're going to have to be persistent.
So your response when someone says, dude, leave me alone, is, gotcha, I'll see you tomorrow?
No, not necessarily, right? Because one, you probably need to look at why would somebody say that? Are you actually being obnoxious, right? There's a difference between being persistent and like, let's say, for example, so Paul is my best example, where I met him the first time and he said, and I quote, go get me your resume. Start there. I sent my resume. I have a reason to follow up with him. What'd you think of my resume? I mean, I haven't got a chance, and I only have 30 minutes to get this workout in. Check with me tomorrow, right? So let's say I break that first ask. So his first ask was, give me your resume. I have no idea if you're even qualified. Get my resume. He didn't look at it, right? But I have another ask. I have a reason to keep being persistent. But let's say I didn't, right? And let's say I go to him and I say, Paul, look, man, I really want to get a chance to meet with you. I want to go get you coffee. And I forgot to see my resume, but I'd love to just go over my resume with you. I just broke something the first step that he asked me to do. Why that would be the wrong way to look at persistence, right? That would be annoying.
So it seems like the path to being able to, like, what our students can get from this is the individual who has had to master the ability to communicate with neurosurgeons. This is essentially the path that they could use to speaking with hiring managers. So it seems like if they're on LinkedIn, or if they see somebody that they know is a software engineer, hey, Ethan, I noticed that you were a senior engineer at XYZ. I know you're a little busy. I just want to let you know I've been focusing really heavily on front-end development for the past several months. If you guys have an opening, let me know. Or would you say, do you know if you guys are hiring by chance? Would you say that, or would you say, hey, I would love to work with the company?
Yeah, probably that. I love to work for the company, but you can also do due diligence, right? So let's say for Paul, So I already knew he worked at K2M, and some of this sounds kind of creepy because it's zoomed in, but I knew a lot about him, so I'd done my homework. But for the students example, if you're reaching out to somebody and you're asking them a question that you absolutely could figure out. For example, let's say you're the senior developer, and I said, Nathan, I'd love to hear if y'all had any openings. It looks like you're a senior developer. What work could you do to make your question way more effective?
Yeah, I'd be pissed if someone did that. To be honest, I'd be like, bro, look it up online. I don't fucking know.
Yeah. But instead, let's say you're a senior developer, and not all senior developers, not all salespeople, not all managers are going to engage you properly to help you early on in your career. Because again, it's a burden. Let's be honest. But let's say that they reach out to you and say, Nathan, look, I know you're working at this big company. I'd love to interview with them. I also saw that I have 3 or 4 positions available. Would you be opposed to meeting with me as I prep for my first interview or whatever?
How many times does that kind of happen to you? Did you have individuals you had to reach out to at the start of everything?
Yeah. So, when I was... everything I did, whether it be photography or film, or when I started selling art at like mass scale, I had about, at the time, maybe like 2,200 followers on Instagram, like organically. Really? Yeah. So what I would do is I would almost use that as like a cold calling list. And I would introduce myself to every single new follower, made them aware of what I was doing, how I was doing it, etc. So even though I got like a lot of no's, I had a lot of people that were aware, and then maybe someone that I reached out to would come back 4 months later and be like, hey, we just moved. We would love a piece for like this room.
Yep.
Like, how does this work, etc. So that was kind of how I did it. But one thing I wanted to ask you, do you think, because we have such an emphasis on freelancing here. Personal training is freelancing in a way.
Well, some level,
you're gaining clients. You're being your own boss, unless you work for a gym or something like that. But do you think that those experiences not only helped you deal with different personalities, but helped you accept no more often?
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, what that was like kind of when you first started getting clients and going through that process?
Especially selling to people on the fucking floor. I never could do it. I never did it, actually. Ethan was my boss. I literally never did it.
Because how many students do you talk to, for example, that are just terrified at the idea of going up to someone and being like, employ me?
Everybody is.
That sort of thing.
Everybody is. I'm still scared of it. Like, I'm scared to approach people in public and be like, hey, if you want a job, let me know. I'm scared to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that acknowledging the fear is important. And it's again, this wasn't overnight. If I rewind 13 years ago, the real reason I fell in love with sales was that by accident. And on some level didn't have a choice. When I wanted to be a personal trainer, I wasn't finished with my degree, and I was applying to jobs, basically telling them, like, look, once you hire me, I'll get my certification. And no one would hire me. I was in a small town in Tyler, Texas, and I busted my ass. I went to every single gym, and no one would give me a job. And I almost gave up. It took me a few more months of getting told no, and I was very close to giving up. And I was like, look, I'm just going to put all my savings into my full certification. I'm not going to finish my degree for another 2 years, but I've got to find a job that pays enough. So me and my now wife were out going to lunch or something like that, and I saw this little gym, Anytime Fitness in Tyler, and it was brand new. So I was like, okay, I'll try them. It looks small, looks kind of quaint, I'll go in there. And when I walked in, the guy who owned it was in there by chance, and I met him, and I said, hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm a trainer. And I'd actually finished my certification at this point. So he said, yeah, sure, you can work here. It was really that simple and easy. There was one more trainer there, but he was kind of in and out. He eventually left like 2 weeks later. So it was just me in an empty office. And I asked him what it paid, and he said, it doesn't pay anything. It pays whatever you sell. I was like, oh, okay. Where do I work? And he pointed me to an empty office, and there was literally nothing in there. And I had no idea how to drum up business. So my first thought was like, I need some phone numbers, because the gym wasn't super busy. It was brand new. They did one big event, and they got like 800 people to apply and get a membership there. So I just had a list of 800 to 1,000 people. And it was embarrassing because I called all of them. Almost no one answered. Almost no one returned my phone call. And but 2 people did. And out of those 2 people, one I signed up. Her name was Frederica, and I'm still connected with her to this day. And if I if I didn't earn her, I don't know where my career would have gone. Because I was calling 1,000 people, getting basically 1,000 rejections. Felt so abnormally difficult that it didn't seem worth climbing. And I think you have to look for your version of that. Is you have to, like the freelancing side of things. You're not going to have to bid on 1,000 probably, but for me, I literally did have to call 1,000 people, and I did not know that was the number. I had no idea. I had no expectation to call that many people. The situation just kind of unfolded itself, and so my rigidity towards it came from winning her, and then after that, I didn't get much better because I called again. And I called again. I was calling the same list of people because that was all I had. And then it prompted me to go to Barnes & Noble, where I stumbled upon my now hero, Zig Ziglar. And I bought his first book called See You at the Top. And I read that book, and I slightly adjusted my process. So I won 3 more clients, and then 4 more clients. Then I started a boot camp. And but that took a year of, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000. No, thank you.
Jesus.
How do you deal with that?
Knowing it up front makes it harder, right? So what one probably issue that freelancing is when you look at those jobs, they may be seeing the rejection only, right? Whereas when I saw those numbers, I just saw opportunity, and I did not know how many people I had to get through to earn Frederica. I think that you have to have a support system. I had my wife. I had school. I had people reinforcing me. I had really good friends, and I also got. So I get kind of energized when I talk to people on the floor, even if they don't close with me. So for me, I was staying connected to the reason I was doing the job was to help people. So I had all these little reinforcements that kept me making the next call. You never quite get over the pain of being told no. It's always there. But if you give it context, like that's part of the job, and you learn from it. You can move forward as long as the motivation for doing that is reinforced consistently. Family, friends, people in the job, stuff like that. So freelancing, let's say the students are, they're on their 50th freelancing attempt, and they're still getting no's. What are they doing that freelancing attempt for, right? They have the community, they have y'all, but they also know that they're building those skills, and they're getting better from those no's. Because sometimes it is okay to say, okay, I'm probably doing something wrong, right? It's okay to acknowledge that you can get a little bit better, so you have a better chance of getting a yes next time, if that makes sense.
So if they're taking that through the interview process, right, a lot of these people are starting at their first real big no's, and they're getting to the first interview, or they're starting to reach out to people, and it's so fucking discouraging, right? And Zig Ziglar was a big proponent for your life. You're the one that pushed him on to me. So what basic advice would you give to people who are getting their first 10 no's, if not like the first 5, and it feels like the world is against them, like they have no hope, they feel like this is a complete lost cause?
Understand that let's say 5 to 10, right? Let's say those 5 to 10 are really devastating. So this is actually, ironically, I'm going to counteract one piece of advice I just gave for good reason. But let's say that those 10 people, they're all no's, and you're just devastated. You're alone. If you don't understand that there's probably 10,000 people looking for people like you, then those 5 to 10 seem, that's it. That's all there is, right? There's nobody else. So if you give context to that those 5 to 10 are not the end of the world, right? There's way more opportunity, right? Where you should probably be hard on yourself is say, what did I learn from these no's? Was I prepared? Was I on time? Did I really have the skill set? Was I bidding outside of my skill level? Am I really joining all the freelancing calls I can? So you got to give those no's context. So give context and recognize the opportunity. Would be the, I think, first 2.
That really speaks to what we spoke about a couple episodes ago. It was after the victim mentality one. Whenever we were talking about, man, what can we control? Like, you can only control our actions, our individual actions, the quality of the actions that we're making. And it's really fascinating. Like, the students that are going through this, it's so scary because, you drive for Uber, you're a teacher, you work in a warehouse, you get off work, you go train, you're trying to learn how to code, your code is just not working, this shit is not going well. Or you're getting far enough that you're just learning more and more that you don't know. And it's just like, it's the most frustrating process in the world. What was it like for you as you're going through like photography? and you're getting all these no's because I know what it's like to DM all those people.
Jesus.
You get no fucking responses, bro. It's zero.
Anyone that wants to like add some difficulty to their lives,
IG DMs.
Try to convince people to pay you money to have their picture taken. Like seriously, like I mean, the thing for me, and Ethan touched on it, which I thought was important, is that you're getting a lot of work done through the no's and the rejections. There's progress being made despite the fact that you might not be winning in that like moment necessarily.
For sure.
But your pitch gets a little bit better. Your empathy gets a little bit better. Maybe like, you know, like I said before, maybe someone said to me, "Hey, not right now, but in a few months," you know. And I had a lot of people that actually, and do you think that's something that's maybe neglected, is the follow-up?
Yeah,
because I had a lot of people that would tell me, "Hey, not right now, you know, but, you know, in 6 months, I feel like I'm really going to give this acting thing a shot, and I'm going to need like to present myself and have a portfolio and all this stuff. So I'll contact you when I'm ready." And kind of like knowing how to put someone at ease, and this is like a weird thing. I don't know if you find this in sales, your kind of sales a lot. Making someone aware of the fact that I was okay with being rejected
100%
made them think like, okay, I want to work with this guy. I had people that would reach out to me that didn't even need anything I was doing. They just liked the way I spoke to them. And they appreciated the fact that they told me no in the moment, but I said, "Hey, listen, you know, I'm always here if you ever need anything. These are the services I offer. It was great talking to you. You maintain a good rapport with people on social media, etc. They see the work." Because I was constantly churning out work.
Yep.
Like every day, I was putting out something new, like a new portrait or a new video reel of something, so people could see like this stuff is evolving. And then I got a lot of, you know, goodwill is like really important, especially when you're just reaching out to people like randomly. If you're on the phone and some guy's like, "I don't think so." "Oh yeah, well fuck you." You know, that's not exactly gonna lead to like, you know, success.
Well, it's funny. So Gong released a really interesting study. I think it was from 2019 or 2021. It was one of those time periods. Hey, Peter. He's playing something really loud. So one of the things that they released was it takes an average of 5 to 7 no's, like hard no's, before you get to a yes. Yeah. And if that means anything for those of you in the interview process, that's probably one of the best things that you can get, whether it's cold outreach to somebody. "Hey, Bruce, saw you as senior dev over at Ethan Taylor Incorporated. I love the idea of what the company does, love the software you guys work on. I'd love to be able to sit down sometime and see if you guys have any openings. I specialize right now in React development. I'd love to chat with you about that." Nah, man, not a good time. Completely understand. Week 2 later, follow up. Ironically, it took me 4 follow-ups for Devslopes to take place. If I didn't follow up with Mark 4 times, none of this would happen. None of the students would be in the program right now. It would still be an iOS program. Nothing would be the same. It was literally a ruthless follow-up. But the funny part is, when you have conviction in what you're doing, that's when stuff gets pretty interesting.
People admire it.
Yeah, because I knew. So this is funny because we talked about the parallels, right? Like, how do you find what? So actually, Ethan's a great example. You worked in fitness. Although it wasn't medical sales, you had a transition period. So we talked about this a couple episodes ago. When you have interest aligned with a skill gap, right? Even if you don't have the skills, but your interest aligned with the job you're going for, that's the key. So you want to find where your interest align with what your skills are. So if I'm a massive fitness guy and I'm learning about coding, go find companies that are developing apps or websites built around the idea of fitness software. Right? For Ethan, he knew about the body. He knew about, what's the term? Anatomy and physiology. You were able to connect those two. You also had a master's in kinesiology, correct? So you were able to perfectly connect those two. Like, it's funny because although to an extent, yeah, you're lucky you met that guy, but also you had all the pre-work done ahead of time. If you never had the anatomy factor, what do you think? Do you think that would have still worked out?
I think it'd been a little harder because it gave them ease that let's say my interest was still in sales, right? I love sales, and but I'm still early. So let's say I meet Paul, and then I meet all the striker people, and in their mind, like, oh man, there's this guy who's really green, and let's say my degree was in, I don't know, finance or something.
Yeah.
Numbers are good. I have a little bit of sales experience, but now they're going to have to teach me more sales, and they're going to have to teach me all about anatomy. So it just lowered the pressure for them. Because honestly, like for Duramatter, I already knew the majority of that. I understood the anatomy immediately. So it just made the process for them easier. My on-ramp was very fast.
It's funny. So you're able to package yourself in a sense to where guys, I got the anatomy factor down.
Yeah.
I got decent at sales because I'd approach people blind. It seems like it's the perfect correction. I want to go through the interview process. You told me a story about when they sat down and they're like, here's a screw, sell us a screw.
Yeah.
Tell us about that story.
I think this is an interview, I don't know at this point, maybe 6 or 7 or 8. And they kind of had hinted that they may do that to me. And I was a little nervous because the quote, sell me the pen situation. But I'd also studied the implants, but I'd never seen them before. So when you ever hear somebody like on movies say, oh, I got a metal plate in my head, and that's what I was thinking, that I would see. And then the guy who was interviewing me pulls a plate out of his pocket. It might be maybe 3/4 of an inch wide. It's a little square plate, and 2 screws on either side that keeps a bone flap together. You typically need like 3 points of fixation all around that little bone flap, and but that little plate is what he pushed over and said, "Sell me this plate." And in my head, I was like, "Wait a minute! I thought these plates were, I thought they were big." I thought they made noise, and I'd looked at this plate, and I did not think they were going to be this big. So when I picked it up, it was literally the size of my thumb. And my first thought was, okay, I'm selling to surgeons. They're already using this device. What could be an interesting question that I could ask them? My first thought was, are you a skull-based surgeon? And he said, yeah, I am. I operate 2-3 times a week, and I usually remove tumors. So how often are you putting in some plates and screws? And I literally knew everything about this plate. What shocked me was how small it was. After he said that, I said, well, are you happy and comfortable with your current representation and the company? Do you feel like you have enough adequate training and that kind of stuff? And he's like, oh, it could be better. I mean, he shows up every now and then, but no, y'all are reps. Y'all make too much money anyway. And I was like, yeah, would you be open to me doing a demo for you? And I'd love to schedule something at your office. And it wasn't very good. It was okay. I stammered all over the place then. Even thinking about it now, I probably stuttered way more than I just did. But I just asked for forward progress. Because in medical devices, you can't just jump into the OR anymore. Maybe circa 25 years ago, but now there's a whole process. So my first ask was, can I get into your office and do a demo with you on this plate? Right? Because you're talking to a surgeon who's going to have to, in his mind, trust this implant and you to put in the patient that he just told the family has a brain tumor, right? So the ask is pretty dense. So that was my ask, to demo that plate.
It's funny, your sales process has always been based heavily around rapport building. Right? Even at the beginning of that, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do for a living? Yeah, are you a XYZ surgeon? Yeah, I am. What advice would you give people? So it's funny, as we go into interviews or even if we're selling to individuals, our ability to connect with them deeply has always been like an X factor, right? So like even when I made the video a couple days ago on selling people, so there's so many WordPress websites that are available online where they go to Upwork, and people have all kinds of WordPress websites they always want done. Hey, I'm a chiropractor, I'm a neurosurgeon, I'm a personal trainer, I need a WordPress website done. And it's funny, whenever you have a conversation with them, that's when you start realizing, dude, they don't need a WordPress website, a Squarespace website, a whatever website. They need somebody who can just fulfill this role, right? They thought they had one need. Turns out they have a completely different one. And the need they have is, I don't want to deal with this bullshit. Take it off my plate. So when you're walking people through the process of like trying to connect with somebody at that, whether it's during an interview or somebody they're trying to approach to help them get the door in for a job, what advice would you give with them? Starting from scratch.
I actually want to talk a little bit more about the no situation. So Zig has this saying that it's an N-O until they K-N-O-W more.
Love that.
And what's useful for like the rejection building, or like building that kind of that putting on that bulletproof vest, is, does the no fit the situation? Is it you? Is it them? So let's say that I'm back in that striker situation, and I'm asking, what type of surgeries do you do? And they say, oh, I'm a spine surgeon. I'm a neurosurgeon, but I specialize in spine. I say, yeah, would you be opposed to trying out my stuff? They should say no. That play doesn't fit for his specialty. That no fits the situation. Whereas, let's say I get a no, and I actually have a solution for what he does. So let's say he's like, no, I don't want to move forward. That no hurts a little bit more, but people who are kind of early on feel like both no's are equal, and they're not. They should tell you no. They can't use your product for what they do. Whereas the other one's a no, and I actually could work with this person, and they told me no. Now you have to think like, okay, what did I do? What can I do differently to better, put myself in a position to succeed? So now back to your question is, what do you do from when you started from scratch? So let's say they're applying for mid to senior level jobs as a junior, and they're getting a lot of no's. That probably fits their situation, right? Let's say they're getting told a lot of no's and freelancing because they're bidding outside their skill level, and it becomes obvious, right? That no fits the situation. I think that analysis first, after you get kind of throw your lure out in the pond, so to speak, and you get some feedback first. That's helpful. So I think step one is cast your line, right? Kind of the ready, fire, aim approach is, it's really difficult to know where you are without some kind of feedback, whether it's a peer, kind of low stakes, whether it's a mentor, or maybe you just start throwing your line out there. You see this a lot when people are looking to either change career paths or go to school or not go to school. There's so much trepidation and uncertainty before they've even applied anywhere. They don't even know if they've been accepted anywhere yet. They have no decision to make because they're so scared about making that first jump. So you need some feedback as soon as possible.
It's so funny because I think this is exactly how we built the freelance formula that we have within the program. Mm-hmm. So it's the difference between most people when they try to sell their services. Hey, do you need a picture of yourself?
Are you asking?
Yeah, like, it's like, imagine people do that. Yeah. Hey, do you want a picture of yourself?
Yeah.
It's like, no. What are you talking? Get away from me, bro. That's fucking weird. Hey, if you ever want me to take pictures of you, I can take pictures of you, bro.
A slight little.
It's an odd thing, right? And then West over here, it was so funny because we were talking the other day about Tinder, and he's like, dude, I got a unique advantage. I know how to take pictures. And it's like, boom, there's an opening right there, right? Hey, Bruce, by chance, are you on Tinder? Yes.
Am I on Tinder?
No, of course, no. Listen, Abby, he is off Tinder. Okay, he is happy.
I was never on Tinder.
Yes, you were never on Tinder.
32 years old.
32 years old, bro. I'm an old man. Make your point. Let's go back to the point. So Bumbles, that's where old people are. That's where I met Kayla. So we're using Bumble as a scenario. Man, are you having success on it? No, not at all. Man, I got an idea for you. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of success in my own dating profile online. I was able to do XYZ. Let me hook you up. If it goes well, if matches increase, throw me $50, right? So context opens. So you had a beautiful point. This is one of the coolest things I ever learned from Zig that you showed me. It's exactly people say no until they know. And essentially the process that he said was you re-educate them, help them make a new decision. When people say no, provide them with more education or more information to where they can make a new educated decision. Mm-hmm. Don't push them just to make a new decision with no additional information. Now they feel like they're just being pushed up normally. Yeah. Right. But when you provide new information, hey, listen, Bruce, I understand you want a WordPress website. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're actually looking for? Mm-hmm. What do you mean what you're actually looking for? Well, are you looking for somebody to take this off your plate, or do you want a WordPress website that you can manage? Mm-hmm. Well, obviously I run a business, so I'm not trying to manage the website. You're not trying to manage the website. Yeah, I'm dealing with stuff all day, right? Like, I don't have the time for this bullshit. Got it. So I have an idea. So I know that you said you're looking for a WordPress developer, but here's the thing. Mm-hmm. It seems like what you need more than anything else is somebody to take this off your plate completely, and I can do that and provide you with whatever you want. You just name the website you want me to rebuild, and I can build that for you. Mm-hmm. How does that sound? A little sketchy, but it seems a little bit more reasonable. You're providing really helpful information. And it's funny, the Challenger Cell has the entire premise of be the consultant, Right. You were the one that recommended the book to me, wasn't it?
No, all the way around. You recommend it to me.
I recommended So the entire premise of it is, do you know what it is off the top of your head?
Yeah. So and not that you should judge a book by its cover, but I'm literally staring at it right now.
I have it right here.
But the first kind of cover is two talking bubbles that are perpendicular to each other, meaning they're clashing, right? And the Challenger sale, to me, I'm going to butcher this for a moment, but is you good?
No, yeah, keep going. I'm telling
good.
them to lower their voices downstairs.
Oh, got it. But is when is it useful to challenge, correct, or kind of consult with someone? So, for example, what he did with the WordPress situation wasn't in some ways, yes, he was teaching you more information, but he was also challenging your kind of preconceived notions of what you needed for your business, right? Because and he did kind of convert you over from WordPress to you probably need a developer, right? And if the book teaches it better, but that whole process is challenging your customers' thinking and taking that process over for them. And sometimes that's what they're looking for. They give an example for I think it's a purchasing manager in the book. I may be forgetting it, but where the salesman comes and talking to the purchasing manager, and she's not really giving him much time a day until he offers to solve a solution for her that's a problem, but he has to literally challenge her to get the ball rolling.
Well, I heard a phrase back in the day that the best way to make a sale is actually to listen, because then you know what to respond off of. And I remember a situation. There was a guy that used to come to Easton, had a construction company, and this was when I can't emphasize to people that are doing freelancing how important it is to make in-person connections as well as online. Like, you're talking about just wandering in a small town and seeing a gym that opened and actually walking in. I know a lot of stuff's purely online, LinkedIn, a lot of that stuff, but the type of connections you can make from somebody seeing you in person and talking to you a little bit about what you do, it's like invaluable. Because this guy trained with him a few times. He mentioned his business. I didn't say anything. I just kind of listened. Did the same thing with a certain someone over here. And
hey, you rejected me, homeboy.
I did.
Don't say that bullshit to me right
now. We'll talk about
that
later. But to be fair, like this guy, for example, told me he had this construction company and everything. He comes to me, just kick my shit, why don't you? He comes to me, and he's got this thing. He's like, hey, I got this construction company, and if I'm being honest, I'm a little behind the times when it comes to social media and all this stuff and everything. And when I heard him say that, then I said to him, well, modern businesses, having a sleek presentation is everything. I milked this motherfucker for like $4,000 in a month.
I love the way you just presented that entire thing. That definitely didn't seem like we just took advantage of somebody.
Didn't take advantage. I did all the work he wanted. But what I'm saying is I was able to get a large amount of business out of this guy for things that were well within my wheelhouse just because I listened.
Yep.
Now, was a part of me bitter because he was a little difficult to work with at times? Yeah.
It's construction, bro.
Yeah, but that's another point, too, about freelancing, is that every person that you do a freelance job for, and this is why I think it's such an important part of our program and like what we do in general, every person that you freelance for gives you a little bit of a preview of what it would be like to work for a different type of personality.
Yeah.
And so if you're in a situation where I've maybe at this point in my life had hundreds of customers, whether it be for photography or art or whatever, that's like hundreds of personalities that I'm experienced with dealing. The person that's easy, the person that's, whatever you want to do, you hand in your stuff, love it, you get paid, simple.
For sure.
The guy that puts you through the fucking ringer for every single part of it, which this guy kind of was. The person that is going to be very unsatisfied and very type A and want everything to be done a certain way. Like, it almost prepares you in a way for like when you do get to that job, that full-time job, you're like, well, I already know how to navigate all these different type of personalities.
Isn't that the interesting factor? Like, in all the areas, whether it's personal training, doing that, gaining the ability to communicate with a wide variety of people.
That's what it is. Communicate with what.
Yeah, this is where everything's going towards, right?
Yeah.
Like the ability to communicate in a team environment. That's what you look for more than anything else, right? When we hire sales reps, we hire coaches, we hire marketing people. You need to be able to communicate with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
How does that sit with you? Because obviously we read the book a couple months ago, Crucial Conversations, and it talks about the emphasis of being able to understand the biases we have when we communicate with people. And like, for example, with you, I can't imagine just dealing with surgeons every day. That sounds exhausting. And people who are, somebody's dying, right? A surgery gets fucked up. I can't imagine they're the easiest people to deal with. How do you handle that?
They're not. I wouldn't say they're the easiest, but I absolutely don't think there's kind of like a running joke between so oral surgeons, incredibly easy, right? They're easygoing. They have lower pressure. That wasn't always the case. You have people that are difficult, whereas like neurosurgeons are typically the stereotype is they're a little more arrogant, right? And in some ways they deserve it too. I mean they have, besides cardiothoracic, they have like the longest training out of anybody, and so I think not overstepping the boundary and respecting that it's their room, right? If you're in their OR, you are there as a guest, and you can be uninvited at any point, right? If you're 10 years in or if you're 10 days in. So I think respecting their oath to their patient, and in some ways you can affect that.
So when you're respecting somebody though, and they're saying, Ethan, for fuck's sakes, grab me the right thing. Why are you taking so long?
Yeah. So one, I have a higher threshold for that bugging me on some level, but you know my pace. I'm mosey. So again, does the criticism fit the situation, right? So I've told you a couple of horror stories in the OR, which we don't have to discuss now. But let's say I am dragging ass, right? Let's say I don't understand what's actually going on. So let's say they're trying to sew up a CSF leak, right, or something. They damage the dura. There's a leak. And literally the procedure can't progress until they get that 5x5 on the patch. Very rare that it's that urgent, but you have to move, right? So now I can digest what they're saying by the context of the situation. Yeah, there's a CSF leak. I need to hurry. You know what I mean?
So what do you do though when you sit there and there's no rush?
Yeah.
And they're just being assholes. Like, how do you respond with it? Ethan, stop being so fucking slow. Grab me the 5x5. You just grab it and hand it to him?
Well, we talked about like the feeling of being rejected or being told no a lot, right? But even us, we're using kind of our we're saying us. They're rejecting us, and you have to separate that. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the offer you're making, right? Mm-hmm. So that version of that is they're probably staying they want to stay in control. It says more about them than it does you. How can you act as a professional, irregardless of how somebody's treating you or talking to you, right? So let's say that's the situation, and I need to get dura. I need to go get another set, or let's say the set's dirty and they need it. So let's say there's like a hair in it, and they're like, Ethan, look, we're about to open the case. There's a damn hair in this. I need you to hurry your ass up and go get it. Right? It's not my fault there's a hair in there, but it's also not useful for me to buck that. I actually do need to hurry. They need to get on with this surgery, and there is a hair in there. That's inconvenient. And again, that you need to hurry situation, that's not against me. They're on the clock. Every minute of anesthesia is up to $100 to $400 a minute, right? And also, it's a risk to keep people under anesthesia. The context of the situation may actually elicit somebody being stern and somewhat, quote, unfair to you and telling you to hurry up, even though it's not necessarily on you.
So there's a really interesting message within that I think that we could pull away from everybody that's in here. Mm-hmm. Throughout our everyday lives, we're going to have individuals that react to us in disproportionately angry ways at times, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's a Starbucks barista, a close friend, landlord, boss, they're going to act out at times. We see it all the time. And essentially what you're getting at here is when they have those remarks saying, okay, did I do something wrong? Like, did I ask the wrong question? What about me saying hi elicited go fuck yourself? Like, what about this connected? I'm not just connecting the two. For me, I can be extremely neurotic. Actually, I'm very high in neuroticism. So I start going to, dude, what the fuck did I do wrong? I thought I'm great. What is happening here? And it turns out, they're having a bad day. This is not about you, right? Don't make it about you. And it seems like in a lot of scenarios, especially job interviewers, we go into these circumstances and they may be acting like absolute assholes, and it throws us off our game, and we start getting really nervous, right? And sometimes figuring out that, okay, it's the analogy they use in Crucial Conversations when they talk about this is, if you made food for people, like for your family, you take it to their family dinner, and you made food for people and you give it to them and they're like, ugh, this is terrible food. They're not saying, hey, Bruce, I hate your food, okay? Or when you tell your aunt, hey, Aunt Shirley, I'm sorry, this is not my favorite food, I did not eat it. She might take it as, you don't like me. How dare you not like my food, right? We talked about this the other day at the sales team. I was going to talk about how I was going to have a bunch of people over for barbecues when I go down to Dallas next time. And I'll 100% feel rejected if they did not like my steak, right? I would 100% feel rejected by that. But it's funny, being able to draw those separations is kind of where EQ actually lies, or emotional intelligence. And it seems like just in the workplace, that's the biggest factor, because we're going to deal with people. I mean, I can't imagine how many times I've been like that with you in some sense, right? Like, I'm trying to think about it. Like, I've had multiple times.
Well, I think a lot of it is certain situations cause us to tell stories to ourselves and catastrophize this, or I don't know if that's a word necessarily, but make catastrophe out of a situation where we talked about this a little bit before. There's really nothing going on, but maybe there was something about tone or the way it was said that recalled something past for you, and now you're playing this whole catch-up game of like, well, you're trying to think so much about what are the worst case scenarios here, and then you become like in those scenarios almost when it's something very simple. And I think like a lot of people are kind of veering away from being able to take stern feedback.
I have the perfect example. Wes, you're going to crack up on what I'm about to say. Bruce has a problem, guys.
What's my problem?
You know what the problem Bruce has? Wes, do you want to take a guess? You know what it is. You know what Bruce's problem is? I hope you say the right thing.
Is it because I'm Jewish?
It's the way you text.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Why would you bring race into this, Bruce?
Yeah.
I bring race and everything.
So when Bruce texts you, okay, Bruce uses perfect grammar. Okay.
I don't know if I knew about this.
It's the worst thing in the absolute world. So I'm looking at our text right now.
Wait, Nathan just catastrophized.
You did.
You're texting is the worst thing in the whole world.
It's the absolute worst. So when Bruce sends messages, I have one message that you've used an emoji on, and it's the throwing up emoji. There's literally nothing else. He literally said this to me Saturday. One of your podcast clips got 11K views, period. Next message, very nice, period. He's giving me like updates in his love life, giving entire like just one sentence, period.
It was dark and stormy that
Yeah,
day.
exactly. Dude, it's like your entire life is like a perfect English grammar. So in my mind, I take this from the standpoint of, dude, why is Bruce so fucking angry all the time? Right?
You want to hear something funny?
What?
I have only been recently made aware by certain people in my life, and
Abby, thank you so much.
Not just her, but other people as well, that they're very intimidated when I text them.
Dude, it's the worst thing in the world, and I'm so insecure about it, right? So, like, for example, when you text me, or even if you when you post messages in Slack, I think like you're being so. I joked to West about this. I was like, dude, is he being sarcastic right now? Is he actually apologizing over this? I can't fucking tell.
Well, I mean, it's not my fault. Standards of writing have completely gone to shit. But at the
oh
same
my
time,
God, Mister, I have to walk 2 ways up to school and back and uphill in the snow.
I had to climb underneath a fucking, what do you call it, like a ditch and everything.
Essentially,
like, covered in mud, the whole 9 yards. But I mean, that is that is a good example. But what I was gonna say is that a lot of like high speed kind of efficiency-based jobs. Like I look at like waiting tables, for example. Like you are going to get yelled at some point because this whole thing has to function in order to work. And if one cog is acting a little slow or just kind of like bringing everybody down, like it's not personal.
Yep.
And that's something I think people need to keep in mind, is that, you know, no work situation is going to be 100% ideal 100% of the time. Like you're going to have situations that are high stress, where you're going to have to like act and respond. And the more you learn to like take the personal side out of it, the better equipped you're going to be, because you're not going to be stressed. You're going to recognize like, all right, the chef is yelling at me. Service is slow. You know, like there's a cause and effect there.
Well, we just had this happen yesterday, right? So we were having the passionate discourse yesterday morning, getting coffee.
Passionate discourse during coffee.
Oh, of course,
really?
bro. And one thing,
pretentious.
Yeah. Almost ruined coffee for me.
So I was sitting there and I noticed that I have a core problem, right? So my entire job as CEO essentially is like, I don't validate that much, just straight up, right? Like most of my job is looking for things that are going wrong and trying to fix them. So like most of my life is like, it's like I recognize when things are going well, but I'm not going to talk about them because there's always ways to improve, right? And it's the same way for jiu-jitsu. It's the same, like literally every aspect of my life has always been that way. We're just moving forward 24/7. And so I realized like, oh shit, there was a disconnect with me and Ethan yesterday. So we were sitting there talking about everything. And I forgot what you said specifically. We were talking about coaching sessions. And I sat there and I was like, fuck, I just realized like in his mind, whenever I give coaching sessions, it's just nothing but terrible bad news. Like you're doing XYZ wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, right? Because the way I communicate with executives is different than the way I communicate with you guys, right? And so it was funny. I sat there and I was like, oh my God. In his mind, when I'm giving context on how I view a problem, it's purely negative, because I'm not going to be speaking to him the same way I might speak to you, Connor, West, or somebody else in an actual coaching session. And by becoming aware of those problems, it starts clearing up so many things. Like if I would have kept on going at that, imagine months down the road of just doing it, it's going to wear on somebody, right? And if I'm not becoming more aware of my communication patterns, it starts fucking stuff up, right? Like it's really interesting. So I'll give a random fun fact. This is like a little tip I got from my therapist this morning. He was talking about it. I think it was called VCR, right? So if you're giving a request to people, or if you're challenging somebody to something, or ever giving feedback, a great way to do that, he said, he was like, validate, challenge, and request. So VCR. So validate what's happening. Man, first and foremost, ads have been great. I love them. It seems like for some reason they're not performing great right now. So this is what I want to request from you and challenge you. Let's try to make things more creative. So what I want to have is by Friday, I want to have a new ad out that does XYZ, right? Can you do that? Yes. Awesome. You've been amazing. Super proud of you. Let's get these numbers back to where they need to be. Right? And he was like, boom. It was perfect. So I spoke with him because I was like, man, I've noticed there's a disconnect. Right, because I could seem so fucking harsh all the time. I joke with you about this, how you could seem melancholy or like really serious, and it's so funny because I've made jokes with people about this, right? Like there's people in the company who talk different than me, and I've been open with them, like, dude, I don't like the way you communicate, mostly because it makes me feel uncomfortable. Like it's so different, right? The way you communicate is so different. You could be sarcastic, you could be snarky. I take that, I'm like, he's attacking me. It's like, no, it's the way he talks. It's who you are. That's what's so fucking odd, because we're so different in that aspect. And just understanding these small... Actually, even Ethan right now, I'm pointing at him. Tell me about your day real quick. What do we do today?
What do we do, or what?
Even right there, our tonality is so different.
Passionate discourse.
You stay right here the entire time.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
We're going to talk about...
No need to yell.
We're going to talk about everything. We're just going to hug it out. And it's so like, so when I'd be willing to bet, like, so for example, people with you that you naturally don't incline towards, they have to be people like me who are just abnormally louder and more aggressive.
Yeah, well, and this kind of gets at a bigger point, right? The way you described how Bruce texts, how it made you feel, the way that you described the surgeon, and like how do you deal with a surgeon who and somewhat unfairly yells at you, and there's kind of an underlying theme there that, okay, those people are doing something to us, and those people are just not responsible for how you feel. right? So
Right.
Bruce is not responsible for how you feel about how he messages.
He should.
That's
be.
up to you.
Nope, he should
Right.
be.
No,
it's
same
bigger
way that
picture.
same way that surgeon is not responsible for how I feel and how he's communicating to me. So you can take the personal responsibility. It's harder, right? But we always want to do that. Man, she told me this. They yelled at me. They talked to me this way. I don't like it. It makes me feel X, Y, Z. That's up to you, how you take that. Don't get me wrong. We have influence, especially as you gain leadership and go into management. But and you have to take that in consideration. But in your everyday life, when somebody rejects you or tells you no, it is up to you how you feel about it. Nobody can make you feel inferior without your permission, so to speak. I think that's Maya Angelou.
That's what's so neat about this entire process.
I think.
Like the actual impact of having the ability. There's something so powerful about the fact of like knowing the things that kind of set you off in terms of different communication styles. Sometimes tell them, hey man, I'm gonna be up front. Every now and then I might get very uncomfortable about the way that you text me. I just want to give a heads up at times if I give an odd response or anything like that. It's not because of you, right? It's because of me. I'm interpreting something the wrong way. So if I interpret something the wrong way, expect I might call you just to get clarification. And it's learning more about our own communication patterns and working with other individuals. Like, again, I didn't mean to kick you right there. We are so different from that aspect, but we've been able to communicate and work together so well. That's the funny part, right? Like we've just been able to sit down, like, hey, let's sit down, let's walk through everything that's been happening. And it's weird to see even everybody at Devslopes, right? All of us are, I view us as everybody like a little band of outfit miscasts. Like everybody's uniquely different. We have somebody that worked in medical cells. We have somebody that was a drug dealer. We have me. I did not just call
Don't
you a
say
drug
his
dealer.
name.
I'm not calling you. I was calling you the drug dealer.
How am I a drug dealer?
How are you a drug dealer?
I haven't done that.
All right, an
much.
art dealer. And
Art.
You are just the most artsy guy I know.
Art is code for moving some weight.
Actually, Sean joked around the other day, and she told me, she was like, yeah, that post that you had where you said someone was slanging. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Sean, empowerment specialist.
Yeah, shout out to Sean. She's been killing it.
Dr. Sean.
Dr. Sean.
Yes.
Well, she's finishing up her doctorate right now. I think she said she's going to be finished in about a year.
Right,
Oh, okay,
good enough
so
for me.
not an actual doctor yet, but close
God.
to it.
Yeah, worst thing in the world, man. But man, it's this has been exciting. I think we're gonna have a lot more of these with Ethan being on board. Much more with Peter to come. I think tomorrow we have Tyson on board, one of our students.
Ooh.
So
It's going to be fun.
it'll be fun speaking tomorrow about somebody who's like an actual student in the program and getting an
Yeah.
idea of like what their psychology is like. Someone who's learning something new, having to deal with all that nonsense. That's gonna be the best part. Like the actual struggles of somebody trying to make that transition.
Yeah.
And Tyson's actually been able to get a decent amount of freelance work. So getting his opinions on what this process is like is gonna be awesome.
Yeah, because it'll be like, this is everything we've been talking about and how it actually applies to someone in the program.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ethan, for yourself, do you have any final messages to students that are out there just starting this process off, getting to their first handful of no's before we sign off?
Maybe passionate discourse.
Yeah, know that the it's a small uphill battle, but you don't have to do it alone. Right? That make sure you understand that some no's are legitimate. Right? Some no's you should accept. And for example, me, when I was really hunting down those gyms, I really wanted to work at a gym. But in the gym's eyes, I was not getting my certification first. I wanted them to give me a job, and I wanted to get certification. All those no's, looking back at it, they actually make a lot of sense. It took all those no's for me to sit down and like, okay, I'm going to invest half my savings and get the certification. Then I'm going to go back out and ask for the job. So I'm a little more quote qualified. So for them, know that engage in the community. Understand a no. Typically, it's a no until your customer knows more. Give it proper context. When the context is that you can do something better and get over that no, just then write it all out. Right, have a conversation with yourself and maybe your mentor or something like that, and just make some forward progress.
Love that. All right, guys, that is it for Sevedge Sessions episode number
9.
Is it 9?
Yep.
So tomorrow will be 10. We'll chat with you guys later.